All right, everyone. How's it going today? It is Patriot Underground. Today is July 10th, Saturday, 2021. And I'm cruising around, drinking my coffee as usual on a Saturday morning. And thought that I would hop on here and share some thoughts with you guys. So I did a couple of podcasts the past couple of days, which so far have been pretty well received. The situation updates, I think folks really are appreciating the content and the analysis and my attempt at connecting all the dots for folks. And of course, also delivering my passion through my message that really is touching the hearts of a lot of patriots out there. And it's an amazing feeling. And I never imagined that something like this would so quickly become a focal point of my life. And now it's as if I just can't wait until the next time I can get on and record. It's almost as if I've developed an addiction to it or something. But that's not really ultimately what it is. What it really is just a natural desire to want to share the truth with like-minded people and to want to have real conversations, real discussions about real issues without all the media propaganda, without all of the deception and the trickery. People are sick of it. And in essence, what they really want to hear is somebody speaking the truth, or at the very least, what's true or what they believe to be true, without any kind of contrived nonsense. And that's really what I strive to do. That's why I told everybody right in the beginning, I wasn't looking to create any kind of misconception about who I am, because of course I'm not revealing my identity. And when you come out as an anonymous voice, and then folks start to listen to your platform, naturally people start to ask questions and wonder who you are, where you came from, were you on a different podcast before, are you actually somebody prominent who's really just disguising their voice, so on and so forth. I've received so many of these questions and inquiries, and it's kind of funny to me, actually, because really the truth is that I really am just an ordinary American. I've never had a podcast before. I've never been a prominent, famous person before. I'm not now either, really. I'm just an internet podcaster at this point. In no ways am I famous, really, or well known. Of course, the show is getting to be more well known, which is wonderful, and I'm grateful for it. But me, myself, I've always been a very, very ordinary person. I've always been I shouldn't say always, but for most of my life, I've definitely been a private type of a person for most of my adult life. And doing this podcast was something that I honestly felt compelled to do. It was something that I felt called to do. It was an itch that needed to be scratched, so to speak. And now that I started it, it's a wonderful feeling, because it's just added this whole other, it's opened up this whole new chapter in my life, this whole new area of my life that I'm exploring now that I never had explored before. So thank you so much for your support. Each and every one of you are so amazing, and in different ways. Your feedback, the things that you say, the questions that you ask, it's not just the positive reinforcement that keeps me going, but it's also the intellectual curiosity and the genuine desire to learn more. And folks telling me that when they listen to the show, they learn more. That really, really motivates me to continue to do these podcasts. And driving around and drinking my coffee and sharing my thoughts is something very, very therapeutic for me. Putting together the podcast, yes, it's work. It definitely takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time and effort, but it's time and effort that, in my mind, couldn't be better spent. Because in my mind, it is my best attempt at doing God's work with the tools that God blessed me with. And so it really is my honor, and having you folks there and knowing that you're out there. It's like that meme that I posted, or that I shared, I should say, I think it was about a week ago, that said something along the lines of, if it wasn't for strangers on the internet, I would have lost my faith in humanity by now. And so many people just resonated with that. And wow, how true is that? How true is that? You folks are literally restoring my faith in humanity on a daily basis. I always believed in humanity, but you can believe in something and have your faith rejuvenated or restored at the same time. And I knew folks were out there. I know many, many millions of more folks are out there who would resonate with this show or similar shows with a similar message, but they just haven't quite gotten to that jumping off point. But I know that people are out there, and the more that the awakening accelerates and the more people that start to wake up, it's channels that are like this one. I'm not saying mine specifically, but channels like this one are going to, I believe, are going to absolutely explode when people realize who the real media is and who the people are who have been telling the truth. Now, myself, of course, I've only been at this for a short period of time, but very, very rapidly you can start to see folks coming to you and looking for real information, for truth. And that's an enormous responsibility, really. But it's the responsibility of all patriots. It doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are, how prominent you are. I mean, heck, if you can wake up, even if you had a podcast and you only had 5 viewers, but if you're able to wake up those 5 people, and then those people could wake up 5 people, and those people could, I mean, that's how American to American, patriot to patriot, all over the world, this is how we wake up our fellows. We can't be worried about how many people are waking up every single day and then at the same time not do anything to try to wake people up or to try to, let's put it this way, to facilitate people in the process of their awakening and their discovery. Because as I've said the past couple of days, really, and it might be a little bit of my cynicism coming through, I am human after all, but I've talked about, my belief that it's pretty unlikely that someone who's still fast asleep at this point is going to wake up, because they're really just making that decision, that willful decision not to, and to reject the truth. I mean, it is a choice. It is a choice. But as I've also said, that choice is only going to be available for a very, very limited time, I think, at this point, because that the choice to ignore the truth is contingent upon the viability of the mainstream media and their megaphone for the deep state. If their megaphone is gone, they have no ability to compete with the truth anymore. And that means that folks out there who have been hiding from the truth will not be able to hide from it anymore. And of course, all of the fallout that goes along with that. But at the end of the day, people are going to realize that the real media are the people, and that we don't need the corporations. We don't need the corporate media. We don't need the slick, fancy production. I mean, sure, it's nice. It's appealing to the eye and everything else. And I have no issue with it. I mean, heck, I would have no problem with the flash and the pizzazz of the mainstream media if they were actually putting out real information and real news. I wouldn't care. The only reason I point it out is because basically what they're doing is they're putting lipstick on a pig. They're putting a gigantic turd inside of a beautiful box and fooling everybody. And so people are going to realize that. They're going to come to that conclusion, that realization. And people are going to start listening more than ever before to alternative voices. But the truth of the matter is that when you think about it, and you go back in time and you think about how Americans used to get their information, it used to be person to person. I mean, that's the way that it's supposed to be. And that's exactly what we're doing right now, patriot to patriot, person to person. Of course, we're putting a modern spin on it because we're doing it digitally. And this, I think, is the great thing about the internet, the fact that I can communicate and people can communicate back all over the world. I mentioned before that I have listeners now from most areas of the world, which is absolutely amazing to me. I have folks listening, and just a quick shout out to all of you. I have folks listening in Australia, in South Africa, in Israel, all over Europe, Germany, England, France. I'm probably forgetting some other places as well. But people are letting me know all over the world that they're listening. And that's the amazing thing about the internet. It's giving us the ability to do that. But what we're really doing, the essence of what we're really doing, is we're communicating. We're going back to the way communication really is supposed to happen. It's supposed to happen person to person. It's not supposed to be filtered through some Leviathan, some corporate Leviathan. And that's the way it's been now for decades. That's the way that people have been gathering their information now. Actually, their disinformation. But that's the whole problem. That's why we're in an information war. That's why information is so important. That's why our minds are so important. That's the entire battlefield. That's what it's all about. It's trying to capture our thought forms and control them and manipulate them and steal from us our birthright in the process. And it's such a big, dastardly, sinister plan that, yes, it took a long time for humanity to really catch on and to wake up and to realize what was actually happening. But that's exactly what we have been witnessing. People are waking up. The past couple of podcasts that I've done, I've gone through a whole list, and I'm sure you've listened to many, many others as I have, a whole list of examples that are really just the tip of the iceberg that show that the American people, and not just the American people, but people all over the world, are rejecting tyranny en masse. I mean, it's super exciting to watch. It's super exciting to see what's happening in England. How people are coming out in the street by the millions, by the hundreds of thousands and the millions to protest these lockdowns, to say no to this tyranny. And this is exactly the antidote. This is exactly what we need. It's the antidote to apathy. Shouldn't even call it the antidote, really. It's really obvious that direct action, taking action and applying your will, of course, it's the opposite of apathy, and that's exactly what we need. But see, I always believed, like so many other people out there, that when push came to shove and people realized what was really happening, and when people saw their freedom start to be taken away, that there would be an awakening. That people would recognize it. They may not be able to quantify it right away. They may not be able to understand all the different aspects of it right away. But that people would get it. And they would start asking questions, and they would start to realize that something was very, very, very wrong in the world. And that's exactly what we're witnessing. And personally, I'm just so happy that I decided to go on this journey, because it's really opened up my eyes in so many different ways. Because my perspective in so many ways was limited. Or actually, I should say that I limited myself to my perspective, and of course, what people were telling me, obviously, in all of these other podcasts. But what's happened is that by talking to my audience, by communicating with my audience, person to person, my perspective has dramatically shifted. And for those of you who have been listening for a while, you'll know that, I mean, early on, I was very, very clear that I didn't think that it was possible that anybody was going to wake up at this point. I didn't think that it was possible. I didn't think that anybody was waking up, period. I just thought that there were essentially two different types of people in the world, people who get it and people who don't. And that by that point, if you had asked me even a year ago that, is anybody going to wake up? I would have told you no. If you haven't woken up, if with all the craziness that's going on in the world, and by the way, things have gotten way worse since then. But even back then, about a year ago, I would have told you, with all the stuff that's going on in the world, all the craziness, if you haven't woken up by now, there's no chance that you're going to. But my perspective has shifted, and I have my audience in large part to thank for that. Because you sharing your perspectives and your experiences with me has really had an effect on me, because it's gotten me to, it's made me realize that there are real people out there who are witnessing the awakening in a different way, and actually are seeing people wake up. And I really needed to hear these things, because it's one thing to hear it on a very prominent radio show. For example, podcast, I should say. For example, X22, before I started doing my podcast, I was listening, and still do listen to the X22 report on a daily basis. And I love that podcast. I think it's just excellent. And there's a reason that it's one of the top podcasts out there, because it's just chock full of really great analysis and information. Dave does an amazing job. But I would listen to him, very prominent voice out there, telling me that people are waking up, people are waking up, people are waking up. Not that he actually says it that way, but he's been consistent in his message, in his analysis. But I would listen to his analysis, and then I would compare it with what I was experiencing in my life, and I couldn't help but notice there was a pretty big disconnect there. The things that he was talking about, I wasn't experiencing in my life. That doesn't mean that I didn't believe what he was saying. In fact, I did. Of course I did. Why else would I listen to him on a daily basis? But the reason I mention this is that because it's been very, very different for me talking and communicating with my audience. That really has opened my eyes in a way that even listening to all of these other voices that I respect has, because it's just somehow different talking directly, person to person, whether it be through Telegram, whether it be, I know it sounds kind of funny to say talking person to person through Telegram, but of course, I mean, let's face it, folks, we're oceans apart, some of us. So we have to use these technological tools, but person to person, talking to each one of you, it's had a much more profound effect on me than I ever imagined it would. And it's really solidified my belief in, let's just say, the message of Dave and X22. Because when I hear my audience and ordinary folks say, yeah, I've had these experiences too. People are waking up. People are asking questions. Well, then what starts to happen is I start to really be able to put my own experiences more into perspective and realize that it could just be that I'm, in a particularly nutty area. Could also be that a lot of folks out there, as I pointed out, are asking themselves questions, but they haven't yet externalized that. They're really internalizing all of their confusion and their questioning and perhaps their awakening, the beginning process. Because as I've shared in my experience, I mean, I didn't just wake up one day and a light switch went off and I was immediately running around telling everybody the truth. That's not the way it works. And I'm sure in your experience it's probably similar. The first stage in awakening is questioning, and that questioning usually happens internally. Especially when that questioning, of course, when you're awakening, what you're questioning is the viability of the system itself. Not just the viability of it, but the integrity of it. That's a very, very big topic to start considering and to start thinking about is a big deal, let alone to start telling other people that you're thinking it. So I think that there's a big possibility that even in my own life that a lot of people around me are in the beginning stages of awakening, but they may not even know it yet. And of course, therefore, I don't know it. But this is why communication amongst each other is so vitally important. And staying away from all the disinformation on the mainstream media. I mean, I've talked about how the mainstream media is an actual weapon. I'm not using hyperbole when I say this. It is a weapon system. It is designed to hurt you, bare minimum. But really what it's designed to do is it's designed to capture and control your mind so that they can then lead you to slaughter. So this is a weapon system. And it's very, very important in the same way like I've talked about foods, corporate poison food, fast food in particular. But all of this corporate poison, all of this processed food, this is a weapon, folks. And people need to start, in my opinion, people need to start looking at these entities for what they are. They have to start identifying them for what they are. And staying away. I mean, of course, we have no choice but to subject ourselves at some point to the mainstream because we still live in this crazy matrix. But, I mean, if you're really actually consuming all of this toxic poison, whether it be information or whether it be actual food or whatever that you're putting into your body that comes from the system. I mean, everything that they push, I'll quote Alex Jones, everything that the system pushes is 200 proof poison. May not be a direct quote. That's pretty close. He's absolutely right. Everything that corporate America pushes onto the public is poison. It's a weapon. And so people have a really tough time. Some people have a really tough time making that leap and identify and really identifying all of these things as weapons. And who knows, maybe that metaphor for you, I don't think it's a metaphor personally. I think it's actually truth and reality. But if you want to look at it as a metaphor or whatever, if you don't like that analogy, call it what you will. But folks, the stuff out there that the establishment is pushing, whether it be the jab or whether it be certain types of food or whether it be, I mean, they're poisoning us from every possible angle. Everything from the fluoride in the toothpaste and the water, and the water supply, my God. It's so chock full of poison, it's unbelievable. But from our foods, from the air, from the chemtrails, they are hitting us with the aluminum in the antiperspirants and deodorants, cosmetics, the fibers in clothing, the detergents, the soaps, everything. You name it, folks. There's poison in it. Is it poison that's designed to make you drop dead right then and there? Of course not. It's a slow kill. It's a slow, silent kill. It's a silent weapon. And that's why I keep talking about this, because I think it's very important. People need to understand if something, you have to start listening to your body. You have to start listening and paying attention to the things that you put into your system, the things that you consume. And yes, information is included in that. Everything is energy, folks. You consume information, you're consuming energy. It's toxic energy. You consume fast food and McDonald's. Well, saying that's toxic is an understatement. I mean, heck, I used to do the same thing. I knew McDonald's was bad for me for a very long time. But I always considered it to just be, just unhealthy in terms of sugars and fats and things like that. And so I would still, I'd get lazy. I'd go through the drive-thru like a lot of you do, or I'd be in a situation where I'd be on the road and I'd only have McDonald's, I mean, that'd be literally my only choice and I'd eat there. But let me tell you something. When you start figuring out, when you start doing your research, and this is just one example, by the way, one of the worst, but look into McDonald's, look into Pepsi, look into what they actually put in the food and drink. And I promise you, you will never eat there again. But it's hard to live in the world once you, I mean, it's difficult because once you become awake and aware, your path becomes a lot more narrow. And you start to realize that the enemy is everywhere. And that the enemy's influence and their tentacles and their attack systems, they have infiltrated everything. There's very, very little in this world, in the modern world, that is still pure. Because they've tampered with everything. They've corrupted everything. They've poisoned everything. They've weakened us and broken us down to such an extent that most people don't even realize that they're sick, and they are. It's tough to identify that you're sick when you're living in a sick world. Sometimes. A lot of these people out there, they're walking around, they're functioning. They appear to be healthy on the surface, but they're sick. And they don't even realize it. And I'll just tell you, one of the things that I talked about with Gene, if you listen to I think it came up it was in my second interview with Gene, when we were talking about the concept of taking control of your own health and understanding how to take care of yourself. And one of the things that we talked about, let's just call it M&Ms. I actually have done some research into that, have had a couple of experiences, let's just say, so far. And I can tell you, I'm just going to tell you this. Absolutely do your own research, but the results that I've had so far have been dramatic. I'm not going to get into too much detail here. I have to be careful on this issue for various different reasons. People in the know what I'm talking about. And for those of you who don't, you can go back and listen to the interview and you'll have a much clearer understanding of what it is that I'm referencing right now. Do your own research. But the reason I bring this up is because this experience has showed me right off the bat that a lot more is going on in terms of my physical health, in terms of my mental well-being and so forth, than I was even aware of. Sometimes you don't know there's a quote, Nathaniel Hawthorne quote from The Scarlet Letter. For those of you guys who probably read this book in high school, you remember there's a scene in the book where she takes the A off that stands for adultery. She's in the woods and she takes it off. It's a punishment that she has to wear for committing adultery. She takes it off. And Hawthorne says she didn't know the weight until she felt the freedom. And it's reminiscent. That same concept is reminiscent of that quote. Because I had a couple of doses of these M&Ms, and boy, I realized that I was actually feeling a lot worse than I even was consciously aware of, because when you start to feel better, then you understand the weight. When you experience the freedom, you understand the weight that you had been under. You understand the oppression, the tyranny. And that's, of course, a concept metaphorically that we could apply to the entire Great Awakening. All throughout society, people are going to realize the oppression that they've been under. And it's a great paradox, because as I've talked about, most people out there think that they're free. who haven't really awakened yet. And when they come to understand how oppressed they really are, how enslaved they really are, how sick they really are, how corrupted they've been, how corrupted they've become, without even their conscious awareness of it. Because again, the system is evil. And so what does an evil system do? It rewards evil behavior. It rewards moral degradation and corruption. It rewards deceit and greed and just about every lower vibrational frequency or emotion. It rewards everything in a society that we should be striving to overcome and to transcend. But instead, it caters to the lowest common denominator. And at the same time, you've got human beings who have a natural instinct to adapt to their surroundings, to adapt to their society, to their living conditions. And so, unfortunately, this is why we've evolved, or devolved, I should say, into a slave mentality. Because people have adapted to their captivity. They've adapted to their enslavement. And they've been told by their oppressor, they've been told by the slave master that they're free. They've been gaslit into believing that. So, people won't know the weight until they feel the freedom. And that freedom, most of us have never really experienced freedom in our lives because we've been enslaved. We've always been free inside of our hearts, inside of our souls. We're created that way. God creates us as free-willed, sovereign beings. Our hearts are free. That's another quote that I love from Braveheart. Your heart is free. Have the courage to follow it. How many people actually do? I know you do. I know my audience does, and that's what's bound us together, you see. All of us have the courage to follow our own hearts. That's exactly what brought us together. That's what will continue to attract other people to this digital family and others like it. It's an amazing time to be alive. It really is. All right, folks, I'm going to sign off for today. Get on with my Saturday. Hope you guys have a great Saturday and a great weekend. Hopefully I'll have time to do another podcast this weekend. If not, I'll be back soon with another report. And I will be very much looking forward to talking to all of you again. So thank you so much. Please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed already to the channel, please do so. And please consider making a small donation if you can to be able to support my work. And if you have, please, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Accept my gratitude. And I will be back soon. Thank you, folks. God bless. Patriot out.